Good morning, I am Kevin Price, delighted to be with you, talking to you today about you and your business. On today's program, we got a lot to cover. I'm going to jump right straight into it. Do want to encourage you to check out usdailyreview.com. Very new, very improved, incredible upgrades continuously being done over there. But it is very eye-catching now. That's usdailyreview.com. While there, like it on Facebook. Follow it on Twitter. Well, obviously, you know, it's very difficult to open up the your web browser to check out a news site without getting more bad news. There's so much international conflict, so much tension out there, and there's a lot of really people exasperated as to what to do about it. We've got a guest today, Bob McCormick. He's the author of the book, Don't Drink the Water, which is something I like to say, don't drink the Kool-Aid, and founder of globalsummit.org. And Bob, welcome to the program. Why don't you give us the elevator pitch, if you will, about Global Summit and Don't Drink the Water?
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I wrote Don't Drink the Water because I was getting a little tired of not hearing any hopeful suggestions as to where we might head into the future. And I did a lot of research, and I found that there has been an idea that's been out there for some time, and that's it. It's time for us to cooperate globally on the problems confronting the human race today. We haven't, the last attempt to cooperate globally was in 1945, and that was when we got together in San Francisco for the UN Charter. But it might be time for our generation to take another shot at that charter.
I would argue that virtually everything we've done internationally has created more tension. There's been more wars since the creation of United Nations than before. Admittedly, they were smaller conflicts, but at any given time since United Nations, roughly 15 to 20% of the war is involved in military of the world is involved in military conflict. International cooperation, when you've got different nations with different values and different worldviews, I frankly don't want their values and worldviews being imposed on the United States. We were better when we were more autonomous, in my opinion.
Well, it's certainly an opinion, but one thing that probably sticks in my head that I can't get rid of is that we're basically very, very young. We've got 10,000 generations of ancestors behind us, and we could have 320 million generations of descendants. The numbers are staggering if you really believe that at our age of being here and only 10,000 that we're done, that human intelligence is over with, our evolution, this is the best we're going to get. I think we have a long way to go, and what that entails and how that might look somewhere down the road. One thing we should know is it's going to be different than what it is today for future generations. I think our legacy...
Yeah, I agree with that. Obviously, it's getting different at a breakneck speed now. I look at our generation and in terms of the type of debt that we're passing on to future generations of $17 trillion just in this country alone. Much of it, not as much as some would like to advocate, but a lot of it is being, driven by our decision to try to prop up countries around the world that frankly aren't worthy of U.S. dollars for propping up, especially at the expense of our future generations. It's disenfranchisement in the worst degree when the current generation that can vote is spending away the future of generations that aren't even here to vote. It kind of shows you the problem of mob rule gone amok, which is what I think is a big problem in our country today.
I think it is too, but I think we need to pick up our heads and look down the road too. I mean, taking care of existing problems is certainly important, but my feeling is we're like riding a bicycle while looking down at the spokes. We need to pick up our heads and see where the human race is headed, and I don't think we're doing too much of that. Our leaders are concerned with the day-to-day problems that are facing us, and we're not turning the corner on the larger problems that are facing us, global weaponry, global climate change, and we have some very serious problems confronting the human race, and national competition that is the status quo and as it has been, it perhaps is not the way that we want to move into the future. Maybe there is a need for a greater level of cooperation. The problems that we face today are global. We may be the first generation to really be sitting on top of a world in which all of the serious problems that we're facing are global in nature. And unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, I think our self-esteem is taking a hit. When we look at all the problems that we're not able to fix, then I think what's happening is that we're starting to lose faith in ourselves.
Yeah, either that or we're developing serenity as we learn that we can only handle a certain number of things. I don't think we're called to be in charge of the nation or the nations of the world in terms of problem solving. And I certainly don't believe we're called to submit to other nations in that process, which always seems to be the case, is that somehow, for example, we talk about the problems of the environment. The United States is the only country in the world that, in fact, is, actually abiding by protocols that it didn't even sign to, for environmental protection, while other countries that have signed those protocols continue to violate it. And I think a lot of our self-esteem problems that the United States has is it somehow keeps on continually kicking itself in the derriere for the weaknesses and inadequacies and bad behaviors of other countries.
Probably so, but the fact of the matter is we could be the greenest, turn our economy around, and become the greenest nation in the world. Well, that's terrific unless the rest of the world doesn't. And the pollution that is being created in China, it's a borderless pollution. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with it on our west coast, and that's the way the world is becoming. We can't solve the pollution problem by having one particular nation rise above it. We all have to go. And I think that that's true in so many areas that, it's just part of, why not discuss the possibility of a global cooperative effort, a different type of summit? And why isn't that on the table for discussion as far as I'm concerned?
Yeah, and by the way, I was looking at, and again, of course, I'm one of those dinosaurs who don't even believe that the global warming argument is legitimate. It's amazing the kind of scandals that have driven that. On the overall Earth temperature, the latest report from the United Nations, Earth temperature the last decade overall, when you average it out worldwide, is actually stable. It hasn't altered significantly. I've interviewed some of the few climatologists out there. I don't think most people realize it. Climatologists are real climatologists are numbered in the hundreds, not thousands worldwide. And most of them are kind of wondering what's happened with the planet, but they know that cyclically weather changes over time. When I was growing up, it was global freezing. We're going to have another ice age, is what I was taught in schools. And so to me, so much of it is a power grab, an overreaching power grab by governments that frankly don't have any idea what they're doing. I've interviewed the author of a book about the global warming scandal that we saw with emails between these people that were clearly cooking the numbers when it came to this type of thing. And so much of this, I think if we worked on taking care of ourselves, focused on our individual responsibilities, pursue the free society that our founders originally gave us, we'd be so much better off. I did have a question about you, though. Chuck Woolery, Institute for Global Communications. I'm not very familiar with him or that organization. It's not at all the Chuck Woolery that we know from game show background, I would assume.
No, different Chuck Woolery.
Different Chuck Woolery. Never heard of it before, but I encourage people, I'm big on reading those views that I don't necessarily agree with. I encourage people to open their minds, and I looked at a lot of the information regarding the book. It looks like a very interesting read. I would say you and I would come to very different conclusions, probably polar opposite conclusions, but that too is okay. Globalsummit.org is what I would encourage you to go to that website, globalsummit.org, and learn more about the book, Don't Drink the Water. And do appreciate you spending time with us today.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
You bet. Bob McCormick. Learn more about him, globalsummit.org. I'm Kevin Price. You're listening to The Price of Business.